It's important that we produce graduates who can solve problems. And that because of that, otherwise you are not going to have productive people employed in businesses and other areas of the economy. So that's the important part. I don't think there is enough in the budget to get us off the track.
But do you think that this is a good start?
It's a good start. It's nothing more than a start.
All right, and Yinsin?
What I see and what I like most about this budget is that I see encouraging signs that the government is finally promoting R&D, promoting postgraduate education to, I think, to have more than 2,000 over PhD being produced within the next few years. But again, to me, obtaining academic qualification and academic attainment is not going to solve all the problem. And one thing good about this budget is that the government is also realizing the fact that it is also important for students and our workforce to obtain vocational training. Because I think over the last maybe few decades, Malaysia has been overly emphasized on academic attainment. So if you're a 10A student, you go very far.
Right.
But if you are the street smart but not exactly book smart student, you are pretty much on your own. And if you look at countries like Germany, Netherlands, they have a good balance between education policy for academically more keen students and students who are very good with their hands and the street smart ones. And for a country and an economy to prosper, we need to have not only the doctors, the lawyers and the accountants, we also need the plumbers, the foremans and people who fix all our things. So I think the government is moving towards the right direction by providing good starting point. I mean, our workforce to be equipped with an overarching sphere of fields that will help fuel the economy.
All right, so building off of that, again, taking a step back, aside from vocational training and the improvements that we have seen there, what are the current gaps in the education system that we are seeing today?
You see, illiteracy rate in Malaysia is really low. Most of our Malaysian people get to go to school. And this is one thing that the government has done very well to provide Malaysians with basic quality or not education. That's up to your own interpretation. But the mismatch within the workplace, the market, and what our school produce is something that we need to dwell into. Quality of education, language proficiency, communication skills, critical thinking skills is something that's very much lacking in the Malaysian graduate community, I would say. I believe employers like ourselves face this kind of problem. We don't have thinking graduates who will be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. They come in a set format, and that's what you get.
Yeah, I can echo that because we find that graduates are lacking in, as she said, communication skills, both written and spoken. They are not really trained in problem solving. So that's a very important trait required by employers. Because if you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to contribute.
So you think that this is a structural issue? So are you saying that this is, the fault of this education system, from the primary to the secondary levels?
I think it's very, very much so.
I would take a different stance. Yes, structurally, there's a lot of room for improvement, but I would also say that it is also in the curriculum design and emphasis of education. Because if you look at the basis and fundamentals of education, let's say 50 years ago compared to today, it's going to be very different. Maybe 50 years ago, having the opportunity to finish your Form 5 is a big deal. But today, if you don't go to university, you are done for the rest of your life. So time has changed, society developed, humanity progressed. So expectation will also change and demand of the market has also changed. So then I think for Malaysia, most importantly is that our public policy, be it education policy or any kinds of policy, needs to have a rolling plan, needs to evolve together with time and to develop as we progress.
Right, and what about the issue of brain drain? We do have a lot of scholars, bright young individuals out there who go overseas and they do have those skills that, employers look for, but they stay there. Do you think that this is still an issue? And do you think that the government should continue to look at this as a concern?
I think that this will continue to be an issue. Do you know that the US is trying to retain foreign students with high IQs? So every country is trying to get hold of students, bright, entrepreneurial skills, because that is what will develop the economy. Startups, if you need startups, there's something on startups there. Unless you have bright and entrepreneurial people, you're not going to be able to develop the new company, new businesses, and so on. And there's a report in the Economist to say that the workers of the future will need skills which the present workers will not be able to fill.
Okay, thank you for that insight. So before we dive back into discussion, we are now crossing over to my colleague Melissa Ong for some reaction on the budget from the members of parliament. Melissa?
Hi Amy. Well, a lot has been said in the 2.5 hours where Prime Minister Dato Sri Najib Tun Razak on the budget 2015. And let's just go straight into getting post comments at Parliament here. So here with me is Dato Rahman Dahlan, Urban Wellbeing, Housing and Local Government Minister. So Dato, what are some of the highlights of this year's budget and especially on the housing allocation?
Well, first of all, I think the budget was trying to balance the budget as well as increasing the competitiveness of the country and also reducing the deficit. Those are the main issues that the Prime Minister wanted to convey to the people. The challenges are real, that we need to take some drastic actions to ensure that we remain competitive and so for us to have a resilient economy. I believe as far as my ministry is concerned, I'm very thankful to the Prime Minister for giving me more money this year to build more houses, especially low cost and also medium cost and affordable housing. 80,000 Prima, 80,000 units for Prima, 26,000 for Jabatan Perumahan Negara or the National Housing Department under my ministry, and about 20,000 also for SPNB. These are huge numbers. Over and above, of course, fixing nelayan houses and also people who have land but without means to build their houses. I think those are the areas that have been touched by the Prime Minister. And also lowering the entry costs, which is another issue which is close to the hearts of people in Malaysia. You want to buy a house, but the entry cost is very high. So the duty stamp is lower now. Some of exemptions in terms of owning your first house have been lowered or even eliminated completely. So I'm quite satisfied with what he has done. As far as middle class is concerned, we can see that the eligibility now has been increased, while sometimes before it was 3,000, now it's all the way up to 10,000. And also in terms of age and also in terms of household income. So eligibility has been spread and increased so that more people, including the middle class, will be included.
So the middle class income earners are always crying out for assistance, and do you think that this budget has actually addressed their grievances? Well,
we are talking about people who are going into vocational. We're looking into vocational, we're looking at reskilling, we're looking at making you a better entrepreneurs, the SMEs. Bits and pieces of that, all in those in the budget. But more importantly, like I mentioned to you just now, eligibility for help for the government has been widened. Kalau dulu mungkin 3,000, now it's 5,000. Certain areas is 10,000 ringgit. So in other words, people who are now previously earning 10,000 ringgit household income previously could not get the benefit from the Prime Minister's initiative. But now this year, for next year, it's getting better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also here with me, Amy, is MP Petaling Jaya Utara, Tony Phua. Thank you, YB, for being for NTV7. So are you happy with the overall budget?
I think in terms of the goodies that's been dished out by the Prime Minister in this budget, there's plenty. And a lot of it has gone towards the target groups that we ourselves are looking to assist, the poor, the middle income, the raising of the brim from 650 to 950. Those are essentially measures targeted at those lower and lower middle income group people, and those are aspects that I would be happy with. There are of course areas that we believe that there will be room for improvement. Two aspects. Just the first one being that I'm personally a little disappointed that perhaps the government should have done more, announced more on measures to improve the efficiency and transparency of the administration, including ensuring that all contracts issued will be via open tenders, so that the government can save more money and do more for the people who are in the target groups which they want to help. That's the first. And the second would be we would like to hear from the Prime Minister over the next few days during the budget debate how we will be looking to tackle the debt that is rising within Malaysia, both the household debt as well as the debt of the federal government, which has increased to approximately 570 billion ringgit.
So YB, also Prime Minister has announced the retail sale of the RON 95, petrol, diesel and LPG will be given exemption from the GST. So your comments, YB?
Well, I think it's a good thing that a lot of goods, besides even the petrol, has been given exemption. The question then is, if so many goods are given exemption to GST, why implement GST now? Why not wait till a time when it is perhaps Malaysians are more ready, the income inequality is lower, and more Malaysians are already paying income taxes before you implement GST. So because if you start exempting a lot of goods, it becomes complicated for the consumers, for the businessmen, and for the government administrating the GST process. So it's a good thing that it has been exempted because the burden on the people will be lower, but at the same time it brings to question why the urgency of implementing GST.
Thank you, YB Tony. All right, so Amy, I think that's all I can furnish you right here at Parliament. It's back to you at the studio.
All right, thanks, Mel. And that was Melissa Ong live from Parliament. So before we go back and continue to our discussion, we just heard from Dato' Rahman Dahlan and MP Tony Phua. And Tony Phua made a statement saying that with all these exemptions of the GST, why implement it now? Shouldn't we wait until further down the road? What's the urgency? What is your take on this?
Well, that's a good question. But really, there's an example on this. Singapore, for example, when they introduced GST, they introduced GST at a rate of 3%, and that was supposed to be revenue neutral. In other words, they wanted the system to work before using it to collect additional revenue. And our GST at 6% is actually the lowest. And if the additional 5 million is going to be given away, you're really introducing the tax as a neutral tax. You're not collecting additional tax. So I think GST, from the business point of view, they need time to get used to it. And a period of 1 or 2 years would be a good time to do that. So I wouldn't agree with the MP, Tony Phua, to say that it shouldn't introduce it, because we need the time to get used to it. The businesses, some businesses have very complicated or complex businesses, and to apply the tax may take some time.
Right, and the government has also come up with measures to make the transition smooth for the businesses. Mm-hmm. Yensin, do you have anything to say on this?
Yes, I echo what Mr. Kang said. I think the way MP Tony Phua put his argument against why the hurry, he made it sound like the government is implementing this in such a haste. Mm-hmm. And of course, I don't like to pay the extra 6%, but if you look at it from an economic perspective and from the policy perspective, it is something that we cannot run away from. And in fact, the government has been talking about this over the last 2 years, and government announced it last year. And I think measures has been done, doors have been opened to businesses to register themselves. And I think, if I remember correctly, only more than 1,000 over companies have registered with the custom for GST registration. And what about the rest of the whole lot? Do people think that government's not going to pull this off? And and therefore nobody bothers. It's something that we have to ponder, and it's also up to the government to deal with this group of people. In terms of the large list of exemption, this is just normal. If you look at GST implementation in the UK, in Singapore, and even in China, of course there will be a lot of basic necessity goods that will be exempted. That's a no-brainer. So I think